good evening, and welcome to The Caring View, the online health and social care platform, elevating, educating, and celebrating all things social care. Before we get started, don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube and that bell. You will never miss out on any of our episodes. You'll be notified as soon as we've got new lives ready to go. You can hit that notify me, and we will sort it out from there. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. Yes, you can follow us on X. Enough said on that. The views we express tonight are of our own and our respective companies, and it's so great to be back. We've been off air for 2 weeks. So, good evening, Mark. How are you?
Yes, not too bad. How are you? It seems strange. It seems a lot longer than 2 weeks, but yeah, I'm pleased to be back. So, with a good.
I'm pleased to be back too, and it does feel longer than 2 weeks, but I'm good. I have news. Can I share my news?
Yes, you can. Fire away. Fire away.
For those who might not follow me on LinkedIn, who might not know this, I'm actually leaving my position as Director of Social Care for the Institute of Health and Social Care Management. It's been a decision that I've not taken super lightly, but I'm going back into the throw of things. I'm going to become a quality assurance and compliance manager for a series of homes up in my area, the Bayswood Care Group. I'm also going to take on their nominated individual role as well. I had a conversation with someone actually about life-work balance, and they were like, I hope it gives you a good life-work balance. I was like, I've got too much of a life-work balance at the moment. I need to be able to be out there, be out of my house, be in a work environment where I'm around people, and that's what we love in social care, isn't it? So really, really excited. So end of this month, I will depart for pastures new, and I'm very excited. Ask me again in 4 weeks' time after that how excited I am, and we shall see. But really looking forward to it.
No, congratulations. So, I think last time we did the show, I think you had just heard. I remember thinking, oh, is he going to tell? Is he going to say? And congratulations. So.
Politics and all that, isn't it? You've got to sort of time it right to be able to start telling people about what's going on and what you're doing. Other than that, I don't think I've got anything majorly new. Do you know why actors always say break a leg?
Nope.
Because they really want to be in a cast. I am still practicing for Care Sector's Got Talent,
I'm joke on of the evening.
Yeah. So what's new with you, Mark? What's new in the world of the Caring View and social care before we get into tonight's conversation?
Yeah, there's not really too much going on. Obviously, there's a lot of talk around international recruitment, a lot of kind of backlash on the way that people that have come over to work in the country are being treated. I think we've said it before, that it's one of those things that's just been waiting to kind of appear on Panorama. So it doesn't surprise me, but I think there's now, Channel 4 did something the other day, or Radio 4, and I think we're just the tip of the iceberg. I think that story is just going to grow and grow and grow. And I think kind of with my NACAS hat on, some of the things we hear and some of the things that go on kind of in the WhatsApp groups where people are sharing bedrooms, like 4 or 5 people in a bedroom, and they're not being paid because they've got to use their wages to pay for the rent. And yeah, I think some horrific stories are going to come out of it. But I think other than that, obviously £600 million for winter funding for social care, which was a big announcement. But if I remember correctly, they cut £600 million off of our budget. So they're just really giving back what they took off in the first place. So
have we even seen the 250 from before earlier in this year when they'd cut it from 500 to 250? The fact that we exposed that they're underpaying people nearly 750 million anyway for delivered care.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is on the manager forums, a lot of managers saying, well, last winter they didn't get paid for the care that they provided, and contracts changed last minute. So there's a lot of providers out there saying that they're not going to do anything, which is a shame, because the only people, which I appreciate, it's a business, but just means that people will be stuck in hospital and won't be getting the care that they need, unfortunately. But other than that, social care seems fairly quiet, dare I say, at the moment.
I think what annoys me about the whole international recruitment angle is, and again, don't get me wrong, the conversation we're going to be having tonight is very much a case of there are always bad eggs. There are always people doing bad things. And the case is, yes, there are people who are abusing people coming over to work in this country. However, for how many years did we have EU nationals? Did we have people coming over to work our farms, to work our strawberry picking, to work all other areas of this country, living in squalor, no great benefits, not looked after properly? And yeah, it's actually social care now that's going to be like, oh no, look at them abusing international recruits, etc., etc. We need to try and flip the narrative to fact that actually social care is doing this because systematic failures have let us down to the point where we have no one to work in this country, no one willing to work in social care because we're underpaid. Our services aren't viable because we're not being paid. The public image of care is terrible because you always want to run a negative story with negative language. And actually, people don't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole. So we're doing our best to make sure that the most vulnerable people in society, the people who need to be looked after and need that care, are getting it. And if we're not going to get the support to be able to do it and things go wrong, don't point the finger at us, point the finger at yourselves within that big shiny government building down in London who are letting us down.
Well, I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think we don't have, obviously, any kind of recruitment plan, do we? There's nothing in the winter planning around kind of staffing. There's luckily something around unpaid carers, which normally they're forgotten about. So actually, providers have just jumped on the chance of being able to recruit from wherever they can. And I think because it worked well for a number of providers, a lot of the others kind of followed suit. But yeah.
It's rubbish. Apart from the people plans that we've written at the Institute, there isn't a workforce plan for social care. We had the NHS plan come through, the NHS workforce plan. And if you do a control find on that, you'll see social care is mentioned. I think it's around 70, 80 times within the document. Sounds fantastic. When actually, I think nearly 50 of them are in the appendices and they're all on website links because it's health and social care now. So the fact that social care doesn't have that strong focus as an integrated part of the NHS workforce plan, even though we're heading towards integrated health and care, it's just, I don't know, it's just wrong. And I feel like social care always get the blame for being the end result of poor planning. But if you disagree with me, put it in the comments and let me know. If you agree with me, put it in the comments and let me know. We have had a comment come through though, Mark, asking whether you're going to be taking my old job.
I know. It doesn't tell me on my computer who the user is. It just says LinkedIn user. Unfortunately, I'm
John Wilkes.
No, I am not taking the job. So whoever that is, if you want to apply, feel free to apply. I did see on LinkedIn that John was sharing the links or his email address and to get in touch. But yeah, no, I'm happy in the job that I've got, and I've got a good work-life balance and a good team. So yeah, I'm not.
But I will say, if you are interested in the role, please do get in touch because it's a fantastic organisation. I'm still going to be working with them moving forwards in my new role. Been making sure my managers join up and sign up and use the full benefits of the training. And I'm going to keep my post-nominal initials because I am professional. Oh, it's James Parker. Ah, very good. Right, tonight's conversation, Mark, from one controversial topic to another. What are we on?
We are discussing beyond evictions. So some of you might remember, must have been about 3-4 weeks ago, there was the ITV documentary around revenge evictions with Relatives Association kind of leading on that piece. And around if you've got families, relatives that are constantly complaining, maybe with good reason, without good reason, actually the stats were showing that the number of those residents are actually evicted from their care home. And we wanted to kind of just have a conversation about that. Actually, that's not the case. And I think just before we went live, Adam, you had the stat around 1 in however many it was. But actually, if you flip that narrative, actually, it's 30 odd in however many it was that don't get evicted. And I think tonight we're joined by Caroline Green and Ben Miller, and just to have that kind of open conversation, that honest conversation, because you know, Adam, you and I have been registered managers, and I'm sure you've seen, you know, people complain. I've spent a large majority of my career in learning disabilities, and I think there's more complaints in learning disabilities than there is in older care because mums, dads see their loved one as a child still, and naturally you're very possessive over your child and kind of the expectations you have. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a good show tonight and a very honest kind of open reality of what social care is really like, actually, beyond those evictions that made the headlines.
I fully agree. So if you are watching in the comments or watching the show, get into the comments, let us know your own personal experience with this, whether you're a manager, whether you're someone who's related to someone who's used care, who's, you know, been served notice and had to find a new place of care. Please do let us know. We do want to have the conversation and we do want to be open and honest about it, but it's important for us tonight to have that sort of care provider POV. You know, it's very much a POV of the care providers tonight, not that we're excluding people who use care, But as you said, there was quite a high-profile piece on the ITV done on that. So let's try and do something on the POV of managers here. So let's bring in Caroline Green and let's bring in Ben Miller. Good evening, both. How are you?
Very well. Hi.
Hi, Adam. Hi, Mark. Hi, Caroline.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much for joining us.
So, Caroline, could you just introduce yourselves for us so that our viewers get to know you and what your connection to that piece was with Paul Brand?
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to have the opportunity. So I am a researcher at King's College London at the Health and Social Care Workforce Research Unit. Very long title. Took me a while to learn that. We're based at the Policy Institute and do a lot of work around care home research, all different kinds of areas. So my work is mostly on long-term care and care homes, and I look at human rights as well a lot. So my PhD was on human rights in care homes and how people view that. And so my connection on to that ITV piece, it was basically based on a piece of research I did quite recently. So last year, it was published in March in collaboration with the Relatives and Residents Association, which is now called Care Rights UK. And so that piece of research was picked up by the media and built on. And if you want, I can tell you a little bit more about it later on.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Caroline. And yes, we're still friends. There's no hard feelings here. Research needs to happen in social care. We need to know stats. We need to know what's going on. I suppose the thing we don't have control of is the way people then tell that story. And I don't mean people as in you. I mean people as in the media. Ben, good evening. Welcome back to the show. Do you want to give him a reintroduction to yourself for those who might have missed you on your previous appearances?
Yeah, thanks. My name's Ben Miller. I'm registered manager of Castleford House Nursing Home. We're a home based in Chepstow, and on the England-Wales border, just in England. We're rated overall outstanding by the Care Quality Commission.
Fantastic achievement, by the way. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Welcome back to the show. So, Caroline, Ben, Mark, we're starting tonight because we've got the conversation we want to have. We understand what's been said. Caroline, could you just give us, for anyone who's not seen the documentary, an overview of the sort of point of view that was given from that documentary?
Well, so the point of view from that documentary, so I met the journalists. They were trying to, get a balanced view, meaning that everybody's perspectives on this topic is being heard. But still, the focus was very much on revenge evictions, as the media calls it. We don't call it that in our report. We talk about the topic in terms of notices to quit and the impact on people. How families experience. So the ITV documentary was mostly about how families experience these so-called revenge evictions. So what they had also done is they went to the CQC and under Freedom of Information request, got some new stats. So I got some stats first, and then they built on that to get a bit of a broader view over a longer time frame. So that was also an important sort of foundation for their piece of work.
So, and again, I'm going to cut in, Mark. Mark, please do just stop me talking tonight because you know what I'm like. I've been off air for 2 weeks, so I'm just not going to stop. You talked then about revenge evictions, and I think the first stop tonight, shall we say, on this discussion is eviction the right terminology? Because I see eviction as you get home and there's a notice stuck on the door, you're no longer allowed in this property, taped up, bags on the side of the street, off you go. No ifs, no buts, no conversation, no warmth, no safety, no shelter. It's no notice, bump, you're gone, eviction. That's not really what's happening, is it? So I just want to get your point of view, Caroline. Is eviction the right word? And then Ben, I'll come over to yourself.
So just I think it's really important for me to, give this disclaimer that whatever I say to you today is based on the research I've done with people and, looking into the law and regulations and so on, rather than all that fabulous experience and really important experience that you are bringing. So from what the law says is that actually, evictions is not the right terminology to cover the entire kind of topic and issue. What we're talking about are notices to quit, which care homes are obviously entitled to hand to the person or organization they've got the contract with, and also the other side is as well entitled to give a notice when they want to end the contract. So that's what the right terminology is. Eviction only then happens when someone decides not to leave after the notice period, and then there's a court order saying you have to leave your home. So yeah.
No, it's really, really interesting. Now, Ben, as a care manager, we hear obviously the word eviction in the news and revenge evictions in care homes. How does that make you feel? What eviction, is that the right word for you? What sort of word would you be using in these situations when you're giving someone notice to move from your home?
I read up on the article that I think you were looking at just before we came on the air that said that 1 in 33 care home residents are being evicted. But I think if you look on where they got the research from, which I assume is the PIRs that we're having to fill in, I don't think CQC actually used the word eviction. I think they used the term serve notice or something like that. I'm not sure if that sounds any better, but I agree with you, Adam. When you say, if you Google eviction, first thing you get is a picture of a house with red tape across it. That's kind of what you envisage. And as I've been manager for 7 years, I've had to serve notice to people for a variety of reasons. Would never claim that I've evicted somebody. I have heard of care settings that have done revenge evictions. And I know of one care home in particular where families have been too afraid to complain because the complaints would get put on the care home social media and they would be threatened with eviction. So I do know it happens, but it's sad because we're in a sector where you're going to get complaints. It's part of, you're dealing with people, you're managing people who are caring for people. There's going to be mistakes daily. And it's how you deal with those, and you should deal or expect to have to deal with complaints. And if your response to that is, well, it's not us, it's you, sling your hook, then that's, you probably shouldn't be in the job, to be honest.
Mark.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've worked in social care 18 years. I obviously know revenge evictions happen. I've never, ever personally seen one or know of a manager that has done it in around kind of the companies and areas that I've worked. I think, Ben, you raise a good point that, yeah, we are supporting people, and with that comes that kind of expectation that families had. And I know kind of pre-show, a few days ago, Adam and I were talking, and in the world of learning disabilities, you get complaints left, right, and centre from relatives because actually, their son, daughter has gone into supported living, into a care home, and you're supporting them to have an independent life, whereas actually they've wrapped them in cotton wool for their whole life, and it's a very different story. And with that comes obviously the concerns that actually you're putting them at risk. And I think, like you said, you need to listen to all of those complaints. You need to act as if it's the first time you've heard it. And actually, a lot of the time, it's just down to communication about actually, we appreciate your concerns that your son, your daughter might be scuba diving and you don't think they should be. But actually, we've done the risk assessment. They've got capacity. We've involved everybody that needs to be involved in that decision. And we need to let people take risks. And I think a lot of the time it is just down to that communication. And Caroline, you mentioned around kind of court orders. In your research, were there many court orders? Was there anything around that? Like how many? Because when I've given notice for whatever reason, normally you're looking after somebody way past the notice period because actually the local authority hasn't found somewhere for that person to go.
Yeah, no, I mean, the people I spoke to, so in my research, I spoke to 17 families who had been in some way had been served notice, and they didn't all say that there was a revenge eviction. They were talking to me about their general experience of being served a notice, the whole, story leading up to that, and then afterwards too. And then I also analysed the local government ombudsman reports where people had complained about receiving a notice and then having those, the decisions by the LGO. There are not actually many court proceedings that we know of at all. And that's because, when we speak to people or to families, they don't really see that as a desirable route. They don't really want to go to a court and, then have the care home be told you have to keep my family member us in. So, they're trying to find something that's a quicker fix, so to say, and court is not really anywhere that people want to go for several reasons.
And I think, we spoke earlier around the CQC, but actually when relatives do complain to the CQC, which they have the right to, the CQC bounces it back to providers. And obviously if the provider isn't, dealing with it, or they don't feel like the outcome's been, significant enough, they go back to the regulator. And actually sometimes, especially in the world of learning disabilities, I've seen learning disability services that have been closed by the regulator because of the number of complaints. And actually, would that be then seen as it's the provider? Because actually you would never really probably disclose that you've been shut by the regulator. And I know that I've supported people, and through Jenny and Diane, before they all merged, reached out to me with a number of people living with a learning disability where they'd been given notice by, by the provider, but via the CQC. And actually there was no support of actually where that person's going to live, and that kind of anxiety that brings to families. The only thing I wanted to talk about before we move on to the next bit is putting my home care hat on, back in the days of private home care. And we did charge, a lot more than all the other providers, but we had a very different philosophy that we would do anything. So we would do the gardening, we would do the cleaning, we'd look after your pets, like the whole shebang. But with that came that kind of mentality for a number of the people that we were supporting, that actually the carers were there like a slave, and the way they spoke to the carer and dealing with that. When you've got a number of complaints coming in all the time about, the way that care's been, if there's actually genuinely nothing wrong, but it's just around the level of support that somebody thinks they should be getting versus what the reality is the impact that has on morale. Because I think then you've got a very difficult situation as a manager. And I'll come to you, Ben, because then you've got a situation where you're trying to manage that complaint with the person that you support and their relative or whoever it is that's making the complaint. But you've also then, on the other hand, got a team that don't want to support that person because they know that a complaint's going to come in, or they don't want to come to work and work for your organisation anymore because they'll just go down the road and get a job. And as we all know, there's so many jobs in social care that the world's their oyster in terms of being able to pick and choose. But how do you juggle that, Ben? I mean, you might not have to, but would you? I say?
That's something you always get. I don't want to use the term problem families, but I think you will always get in any care setting those people who have unrealistic expectations, and that might be dad comes in and they absolutely want he's full hoist and they want him up and walking in 10 weeks so he can go home, and they using my clinical judgment, I can look at someone pretty much and go, I don't think that's going to be possible. But then they're coming in, why isn't he walking? Week 2, why isn't he walking? What have you done? Why is he still being hoisted? And I'm just kind of planning for this. One of the things that I've written, which you said, Mark, communication, and it's having those expectations. And one of the things I say to people before they come to us is I need to have a sit down face-to-face or telephone call with the families and ask what their expectations are of us. A lot of them, it's the first time their loved ones come into a care home, so they don't know what to expect, in which case then I can look at, right, well, we offer this. Is this something you'd be interested in? We offer this. For some people, they've got a very clear plan, and I'll try anything. I mean, you guys have had my head of lifestyles, Amelia, on here, and she's put people who need hoisting down a water slide and stuff. So we can do some pretty incredible things, but we're not miracle workers. I've had people in and I've gone, I don't think they're going to be going home. And 2 in particular that I've made a note of here we've been able to get them to a state where they have been able to go home, which was just incredible. But for the majority, unfortunately, in my line of work, you look at caring people who are 80, 90, and some of them have genuinely given up, and it's having to help the family come to terms with that. I get your point in that if they're rude, obnoxious, arrogant, completely unrealistic, I can understand why some people would turn around and go, it's not working. I've cared for some lovely people, some amazing people, and it has been blighted by the fact that the families have been difficult. I'm quite approachable. I'm quite happy to sit there and listen to someone rant at me for ages. I'm very lucky in that generally you only get one at a time. But yeah, I can quite understand why places would serve notice to someone purely because the family are difficult. But it depends again on what you've done about it. I think in what I saw, Caroline, there was the one person during the pandemic who complained because they weren't able to visit or they weren't able to speak to their loved one, and then the care home just slapped the notice on them straight away, which that's not great. And we had these problems during the pandemic as well. I had when lockdown started, I was getting emails from one person in particular who didn't visit anyway, who was saying, you're imprisoning mum. This is unacceptable. We can't. So I took screenshots of all the BBC articles from Spain where care home residents were being abandoned and left to die, and just kind of saying like, look, this is happening. If you guys are, if you carry on, this could be us if this happens. And just communicating, talking people through why we're doing this, rather than going, they're kicking off, right, let's chuck them out.
And so many good points raised here, and I just want to start with yours, Mark, around the home care side of things. My experience as an ex-manager, I served more notices to quit to people who used my home care services than I did in the residential home. I can count on two fingers how many people we served notice to quit in the residential home during my tenure there of 10 years. 2 people. In home care, it was a lot different. And I think that is down to, and I used to call them hyacinth bouquets in my head. I wouldn't call them to their face. But it was very much a case of, you're such a pig, you can't even fold the corners on my bed sheet properly. And it's those expectations of their life that they've no longer got the ability to do anymore. And they can see that the care teams are there trying the hardest, but that expectation's not been managed, and Jenny said in the chat around us being able to actually manage the expectations of our care workforce. So it's fine to say that we're going to come to your house, we'll do some housework and we'll do this and we'll do that. But it will be within the realms and the capabilities of those individuals. It might not be to the standards that you usually expect, but it will be to a standard that meets IPC, which meets the cleanliness of your home and allows you to continue living independently within your own place. It's when they start getting to that very sort of nasty space of criticism and judgment that the morale starts to dip, and you then get sickness that you've never experienced before. I can't work today. And you start to see the trends of who they're going to. It then makes it unsafe and unviable to provide care to other people in the community. So I will be honest, I found it very easy to do in home care, because the majority of the time I'd be having those conversations with them and going, you're really, really not being that nice to my team. I'm sure I can get a group of them to come around to your house and you can try and explain it to them how you want your bed making. But I can't tell you that they're all going to be able to do it perfectly every single time. And unfortunately, that's also not the priority of your visit. That's an additional thing that we're going to try and do to support you within that time that you're paying for, that you don't want to pay extra for. So that mentality is very, very difficult. And again, with the whole in the sort of COVID realm of things, in my John's Campaign ambassador role, in our Rights for Residents advocating roles, I met relatives who would sit there and go, I wasn't allowed to visit my mum. And then it would transpire that actually they were allowed to visit, but they didn't want to visit on the days that they were saying that was available for them to visit, or for the duration that they wanted to visit. And they took that as in, actually, no, I'm not able to visit. When actually, in the grand scheme of things, we were battling a worldwide pandemic and people were trying the hardest to keep people safe and keep people coming in. So it's trying to get both points of view across, but it's the negative that gets seen the most. I think the morale is the hardest thing. And we've got a workforce that is underpaid, underappreciated as it is. We need to, as people using carers, people employing people, as relatives, we just need to understand that actually they're probably just doing things that they're told to do. and we can't be taking it out on them because they're not going to come to work. And if they don't come to work, we've got no one to care. That's not saying we get away free of anything. You can complain. You should complain to the care home first. Don't just go straight running to the regulator. But that morale is really important for us to keep up.
I think just touching on that, I wrote down, kind of listening to you there talking about home care versus care homes. I think the reality is very different. I think when you give notice to somebody in a care home, you're there face to face. In home care, you're generally sending a letter to that person's address. You don't normally go and deliver it. So it's a very different kind of notice that you're serving. But also I was thinking about skill set, because we'd quite often get complaints around, you know, oh, they won't cook a meal, but they'll do a microwave meal. But actually, if that person's never been taught, I mean, I can't cook. Like, I'm the first to admit, like, don't ask me to come around and cook a meal for you, because we ain't getting one, we're getting a takeaway, which people equally love. But actually, like you talking there about making a bed, I've never been taught to make a bed. I personally leave the duvet kind of unfolded because I think it airs it. But so everybody's brought up very differently. So actually, your expectation versus the carers' kind of life skills and kind of how they've been raised shapes kind of what they're like. And I think talking on boundaries, the other thing I wrote down was around training, because I think as a frontline care worker, you have so much training. You receive it left, right, and centre. You have your induction, loads of e-learning, loads of face-to-face. Then you go to a senior level and you might get a bit more. But actually, as a manager, you then don't really get that training. And I think a lot of my kind of how to manage complaints came from when I worked at Ally, because they were owned by Saga, who had all the cruises and everything else. We went on all of their face-to-face training, and actually it was geared towards if you worked in one of their stores or their customer services. And the conflict management training was so different to anything else I'd had before. And I kind of lean back to that all the time. But actually, we don't skill our managers in handling complaints or how to conflict manage, because it's just not part of that kind of social care manager role. But yeah, Adam.
Caroline, is there anything you want to add around the whole morale angle for people working in care and the way families can interact with them before we move on to the next point?
Well, I think, you know, what's coming out of this conversation, again, I think is just the importance of relationships and how these relationships are being managed. And that's certainly what I saw, and the research I did as well, is that, you know, people, they could have had an experience that was more neutral even when they had to leave the home, because of the way that it was managed. And, you know, they felt respected. They knew what was coming. They had been communicated that. So I think what you just said, Mark, that point about training, conflict resolution, having that clear conversations with people so they know what the next step is, I think that's really important. And around morale, I mean, I have spoken to some care home managers who have told me, look, I've got abusive relatives here, and staff are hiding. They're literally hiding in the cupboard when this person comes because they're so scared. And we are in a time where, you know, it's really difficult to find staff. We want to protect our staff and make sure that we look after them. So, you know, sometimes we feel like there's no other way for us other than, you know, serving a notice. And yeah, we've tried to do it according to, you know, the policies and procedures that we need to follow. But yeah, that's why we had to do it. We didn't want to, but we also need to protect our staff.
And you know, this moves us on quite nicely to the next part of the discussion is, you know, what can lead to people being moved from places of care to, say, other places of care, being served notice to quit. And just before we do, you know, talking on the relative angle, there must be nothing worse than living in a care home, actually quite carefree, enjoying where you live, enjoying the care that you're getting, and then having a relative who's dissatisfied about something, who kicks up such a fuss that you're then taken away from your safe place of care to somewhere else because the person on the outside not receiving the care isn't happy with the support they're receiving. And I think it's really important that we actually bring ourselves back to the focal point of the most important person in all of these conversations is the person receiving the care. And that's what we need to think about. And even if relatives are, and again, this isn't me sort of slandering relatives, I'm not at all. I'm a John's Campaign ambassador. I'm all for the rights of people receiving care, having access to families. who throw around the power of attorney card. Well, I'm power of attorney, I'm power of attorney, I'm power of attorney. Just a quick reminder, a power of attorney is only valid if you're acting in the best interest of an individual. The minute you stop acting in the best interest of that individual, the powers of that power of attorney become void. So if you're acting in your own best interest and not the interest of the person providing care, you then run the risk of your rights to decide and make decisions being revoked, with potential court action if they want to go to the court of protection to get it revoked. So it's about being careful and focusing on that person that we're supporting. But we have had a comment in the chat from Helen. And this came through when we were talking about whether evictions was the right language. And she said, no, it's not. It's highly emotive. And the difficulty their experience is finding somewhere else, as notice has been served due to challenging behaviour connected to my relative's dementia. Why would someone else want to accept them? ? And again, there's an obvious reason here why this person's moving. It's the place of care can't meet their needs, can't safely meet their needs. They've got to protect that person. They've got to protect everyone else in the home. And if you're a good care home or an outstanding care home, you'll be having conversations all the way through the care planning process, all the way through those care reviews. Relatives will be fully up to date of where that person's needs are, and they'll be bracing themselves for this conversation to happen if they know something's changing and they know someone's behavior and condition is declining. Caroline, what are some of the reasons you found during your research that people were being served notices to quit?
So I think that the CQC data, that's the only data that actually gives us, more of an idea of what's happening. And there, the large majority of reasons being given is that it's a change of care needs that's leading to the notice. And then, as many of you will know, in the PIR, you can also say, sort of write in a box if their notice had been served for any other reason, and you can just say why. And the CQC doesn't actually, because it's such unstructured data, and they don't have the human resources to, really filter out the different reasons. That's all the different kind of issues that care homes are facing. So from what I found with my research, interviewing people and going through the LGO reports, it was often also a change of care needs, but it was also a breakdown of relationships between the care home and the families. And, as you rightly said, it's not about the resident most of the time then in that kind of scenario, but that breakdown of relationship, and where people then had received the letter, the notice letter, where it actually said, look, we just don't trust you anymore, and we don't feel like this is working, so you need to leave. And some people had not been given any reason at all why notice was served. And that was particularly upsetting to the people I spoke to, when they didn't even really know. They could just sort of think why. They have the whole history. I mean, the interviews I did lasted 2 hours, basically all of them, with people telling me the whole story leading up to the notice, and highly emotive what's happening afterwards as well, with all these different reasons.
Huge hats off here to be able to sit down and do those interviews, because we know working in care, it's incredibly difficult to just have the conversation. So to hear that raw emotion must have been taxing on you emotionally as well. And I think it is sad when there is no notice or no reason of notice being given. And that's where I think we'd be saying, look, there's a breakdown of communication from the care home here, and there is a duty on both sides to do the best that we can do. Mark, I saw you on mute.
Yeah, no, just listening to Caroline then talking, I completely agree with what you've just said. It couldn't have been easy to sit with those families and to hear that. And there should always be a reason. There shouldn't be anybody being evicted without a reason, because even if they are a notorious, complainer, actually that could be a lesson learned. Actually, that when they go to the next place, actually I can't behave like that. Actually, the boundary was crossed. I do wonder how much of it, though, of that reason of changes in care needs is the onus on local authorities, because quite often you can't give notice unless there is a change in care needs. So quite often what I hear around here is, when people are given an uplift in fee, it's always for new people. It's never for the current residents that you're looking after. So actually all that happens is notice is given because needs have changed, Because if somebody's lived there for, a year in your home, the needs will have changed. And actually all that happens is that notice is given just to try and get that uplift, which actually a relative would never see that side. And I've been through that many a time with people and their families about actually we're going to serve notice because actually for a business, we're not actually making money. Like your son, your daughter, your mum, your dad has lived in our service for the last 10 years. And we're being paid double for a new adult that we're supporting compared to your loved one. But actually, this is the process we have to take. And I can reassure you that they're not going to go anywhere. But it could get up to like day 1, 2 of, left to go, and then they'll suddenly pay it. And actually, the trauma that puts, the relatives through, the fear that actually, am I going to have to find someone? They're telling me that they're not to worry, but actually I've only got 2 days left. I can probably appreciate, but I do wonder, how much of that we need to put the onus on the local authority for having those terms and conditions, and also the regulator, because they obviously are inspecting local authorities now. So actually they have the power to change that kind of narrative. Ben, I saw you nodding along. Don't know if you've got anything to add there.
I've made a note here actually, which I've actually flip what you've said, what you guys said on its head. And actually, I've had 2 people that have left my service because they've actually improved. And so social services or the health board have come in and gone, great, we're going to pay you less money then. And at the moment, especially, well, mainly where we are, I'm sure it's similar elsewhere. I'm just a middleman. I quote a fee. Any negotiating isn't between me and the social worker. It's between me and their boss's budget holder or whatever. And I've had 2 people come in, both are one on a social services nursing rate, who they deemed after being with us for about a year was now residential, and basically took about £300 a week off the fee, which isn't sustainable. And turned around to the family and basically said, oh, well, Castleford has said they can't meet mum's needs. So really sorry, we're going to have to move her. And I don't know if you know the geography, this person, we're in Chepstow, the only place they could find that could meet her needs at the fee they were offering was Bath, I think, which was about an hour and a bit away, something like that. So they've, bearing in mind, family lived 10 minutes up the road from us. And they were basically, Castleford said they can't meet her needs. So we were the bad guys, Luckily, I had a very good dialogue with the family who were distraught that she had to go. But yeah, I was the bad guy because I wasn't taking £300 a week less for this person. And then I had somebody else during the pandemic. Our health board brought in these discharge to assess just to clear the wards out, with a guarantee that if the person didn't meet criteria for health board funding, social services would match it. So lady comes to us paying X amount, and then same thing happened, improved, came for assessment, didn't meet criteria for CHC funding. So we're going to knock, it was about £350 a week off of the fee and put it down to social services rates. And again, I can't run a home on those sorts of fee levels. And again, I'm the bad guy because I'm not taking those fees. I'm the horrible money grabbing person who's, doesn't matter that I've got to pay staff wages, I've got to maintain equipment, keep this person safe. I'm the horrible person. And it's, they go back to the families and go, Castleford have said they can't meet mum's needs. Really sorry, they're kicking her out. And that person was found in another care home. And so we're technically being penalised for providing a really good standard of care, unfortunately. We've been lucky in terms of uplifts, what you said, Mark, about generally we get a generic uplift in our local area. But our local authority fees are significantly less, probably nearly half as much as what we charge generally to provide standard of care. So it's to our credit. If somebody's money runs out and they go to social services nursing rates, we haven't served notice on people, which I think a lot of places don't do. I'm of the opinion, well, you've spent your family's inheritance on your care. The least we can do is maintain that care. But that's still a massive hit. So then, if their social CHC then decide, well, this person's now residential until it, we can't keep on taking hits like that. It's a business at the end of the day, unfortunately.
And this is it, isn't it? The M word, the P word in social care, money and profit, usually has such negative connotations, and people automatically think, oh, money, profit, you're in it for the cheese, that's all that you want, when actually no, we have to make a profit by regulation, because we need to be able to reinvest it back into the service, and we need the money there to actually provide us that safety net should anything go wrong. Wages are increasing exponentially, and you're telling us that you want us to pay the staff more, so the only way we can do that is by bringing more money in. That's the only way we can do it. Energy bills, insurance, food bills, everything's gone up since Brexit and COVID in the cost of living crisis, and it's only going higher. So we need more of that money coming in. So it's a case of, and again, I'm not saying this is you, Ben, or Mark, or myself, or anyone else, but it's about having that open, honest communication from the get-go of being able to say, look, this is what's going to happen. This is the situation that you're in. Yeah, exactly. You have to comply. You have to make a profit. And I think just going on the whole local authority onus, because Lord knows I've got it out for them at the moment after our piece that was featured in The Guardian.
Same.
But when it comes down to changes of care needs, and it can be difficult, and it is, especially if you're living in a residential home and your needs escalate to nursing needs or having clinical needs. And yes, I know we can use our domestic, our community care teams, and I know that they are there to support us. But 9 times out of 10, that person's needs will evolve to the point where actually they need more actual care interactions throughout the day, throughout the night, within the setting that they're living. And it's not just about the nurses coming in to support them. And to be able to do that, to be able to put more people on the floor to support them, to give them that safe life, means more money. And I know a lot of places will say, look, it's fine, they can stay here, but we're going to have to up their care, which means it's going to be an increase in cost. No, we don't want that. Well, then we're going to have to serve notice, because they need to be somewhere that's safe, because actually they're causing an unsafe environment now for the people we're supporting. Even if in all of that, the relatives are like, yes, I accept this. This is the right decision. I'm so glad that you've said this, because I want to keep mum or dad safe. And we're going, that's brilliant. You're listening to us, and we've had this open communication and everything's hunky-dory. You then go to social services and go, hi, just letting you know, the family and I, we've had this conversation. This person is going to have to find a new place of care because we can't meet their needs here. We're going to serve notice. Oh, well, there's nowhere in the area accepting. There's nothing we can do to support the move. No, we can't pay you more for one-on-one care. And actually, you hit that wall then, because there is very little support to move people on to new places of care. When people move into care, especially if they're discharged from hospital, and this is since the beds crisis within the hospitals over the last sort of 12, 18 months, all they care about is getting someone out of hospital into the community. Sure, they can transfer with one, mild dementia, absolutely fine elsewhere. They get to that care home, actually they can't transfer with one. They need a standing aid or a transfer hoist to be able to do that. Dementia is probably a bit more advanced than they'd actually let on, and you're there realizing probably not a great fit for this environment. Nothing against the person who's arrived, but actually they've been sent to us under a false assessment. Now, if you then take that person on, as soon as they're in, you've got no choice then, and it's very difficult to help that person move on to a new setting. So the whole system is failing social care, in my opinion. It's just my opinion, is failing social care to the point where actually we're making these decisions to keep people safe, and then there's no structure or infrastructure to follow it on thereafter. And I think bringing up the sort of next area of this discussion is, what does go wrong? So I've started. I don't think there's the infrastructure there to help people move on when they're in these settings, or to support them or pay them. Caroline, I'm going to come to you, because obviously you are the academic in all of this, and I've worked with you for a number of years now in the work that you do, and I think your research is incredible. So I love reading what you do. What have you found during this research to where the failures have gone? Where is communications failed? What's gone wrong in a lot of these situations?
Yeah, so first I would just want to acknowledge the conversation you've just had around local authorities, because I think it was fascinating to listen to, because this is the intricacies that we haven't heard about yet, and the whole role of that within the whole notices to quit or evictions, communication, what's going on. We have to hear your views, your experiences, to see the whole picture. I think we're just scratching the surface. So, I really appreciated that conversation just now. So going on to what goes wrong. So from my work with the interviews and the reports, what has gone wrong is that, well, I looked at the Competition and Market Authority in 2021 published a very good guide for care homes on, when to serve notices to quit, what policies and procedures to follow, what kind of legal framework there is, you have to take into account. And so I think that the LGO reports really show clearly that whenever fault was found after notice to quit had been served and, was unjust, that those policies and procedures weren't followed. And those are usually person-centeredness, keeping people in the loop, keeping them informed, having, the different meetings to see what is happening and to note it down. So really having it all written down to show what is happening and communicating with people in a person-centered way. What also goes wrong is that notices, so that the notice period should be no shorter than 30 days. That goes wrong in many cases too, that some people are not given any days, especially if it's in the hospital, suddenly served notice you're not allowed to come back. I've had people who said only 5 days, 1 week, the relatives are scrambling to find a new place and just simply can't. What also has gone wrong is the time after the notice had been served and then people actually leaving. Sometimes the residents were at the end of life, and people told me that, they were sort of allowed to stay in the home with their father who was dying or the mother at the end of life, but were not given any support whatsoever, had to sleep on the floor, weren't given any kind of, support, emotional or, feeling okay. So those are all, that person-centeredness, that high, good relationships that I think make outstanding and good care homes, that's really missing.
Oh, I was just going to say, listening to you there, I think that one of the things that probably the families don't see is, especially from a learning disability point of view, sorry, the dog's starting to yap, is that actually the lack of support from healthcare professionals. Because sometimes you take somebody on living with a learning disability and they might have behaviour that challenges, but actually that's what's got them evicted from the previous service. So actually the social worker doesn't tell you that. None of the health colleagues tell you that. The families don't tell you that, all because actually they're worried that they won't be able to find a suitable place, or they know that the person is going to end up in a more secure unit. So you take them on in good faith on the assessment that you've got and the information you're being told. And then you have that honeymoon period, and then those behaviours start to evolve and develop. And I've had situations where you call the social worker, they don't want to know, you call the emergency duty worker, they don't want to know, you call the mental health practitioner, they don't want to know, you phone the police, and the police will advise you to put them in a room and lock the door. And you're like, well, I don't know if that's legal, because I'm pretty sure that's against everything. And then you have to obviously contact the CQC won't help you, and you are left as a provider in a very difficult position. And the only end result is that you turn up at A&E with the person presenting all these challenging behaviours, and it's horrible for the staff team that have that relationship to then watch that person be sedated, and then you're like, actually, we can't take them back because we can't manage those behaviours and we can't manage actually that situation. One, because we didn't know anything about it and we don't have the training for that. And two, just because it puts all the other residents that are living in that service at a higher risk as well. And I think sometimes that's a lesson to families as well, that actually, if you'd been very honest, okay, we might have said to you, we couldn't have supported your loved one, but actually we could have said, give us a few extra weeks. We'll make sure our staff are trained and we'll make sure that we've got the resources in place so that we're equipped to deal with that. And I think listening to that kind of notice period, and I put my hat on now kind of in my current role in reablement, where actually people are referred out of hospital into the community to our service, with the families and the person being told you're going to get 6 weeks free care. And this has been the case because I worked in reablement many years ago. And then once that person's independent and you give notice because actually they don't need any support anymore, and it's only a 6 week, up to 6 week service, or actually they need ongoing care, the complaints come in because actually families and the person are like, well, the social worker at the hospital told me I'm going to get 6 weeks worth of free care. And regardless of how many times you tell that family, unfortunately, that's not the case. Look, here's all the information. They shouldn't be telling you this. And you have those conversations with the hospital teams. sometimes you're kind of set up by the colleagues that you're working with in other sectors because they don't see that end result. Ben, I saw you unmute, Anadon.
Go on, Adam.
No, I was just going to add 2 comments to this before we came on to Ben, and I think it segues nicely into you, Ben. So I've had both experiences. I've had the experience of relatives coming and going, "Oh, I'm so glad I've been able to move mum in. And, you know, it's really, I'm just really, really happy." And they basically drop them off, get in the car and drive away, and then you never see them again. And, like, you literally never see them again. And you can just imagine them driving home going, "Ha ha ha." And then actually the truth of that person's condition comes through. Because even if you've gone and done that face-to-face assessment, even if you've gone to meet them, everything will have been sugar-coated, everything will have been orchestrated to a way to make it appear that person was more capable than they actually are. And then, like you say, as soon as they're in your setting of care, actually, you've then got the duty of responsibility. You are the sort of providers for their care. And then I've had it the other way around, which, you know, Jenny's put into the chat, and actually relatives sometimes go into really deep denial and don't want to accept that their loved ones have progressed to the position that they're currently in. And especially if they've been living with them for such a long time, say they've been living in a community setting in their home, they'll have grown used to, say, the aggression and the annoyance. I saw it with my grandma, with my granddad before sadly she passed. And he developed subconscious techniques to deal with it. So you'd go, but actually, no, she lashes out, Grandad. No, she doesn't. She's never lashed out at me. And as he's doing that, he's probably holding her hands while she's trying to hit him. And because he's doing that subconsciously, he doesn't think about it anymore. And relatives don't sometimes see that. So when someone moves into a new setting, those behaviors will then present. Ben, from your personal experience, where have things gone wrong? And you're nodding to what Mark said. Obviously, what's Jenny said in the chat. What's your POV on this?
I pretty much agree with what Mark was saying about. I've had this before where hospitals and some families have lied or hid information in order to get their loved one in. Hospitals are notorious for it. You know, oh yeah, he's a sweetheart. Wouldn't lash out. Wouldn't do this. Wouldn't do that. He just sits and watches TV all day. Absolutely fine. And then I'm getting a phone call at night because he's smashed a window and trying to climb out of it, and you know he's just, you know, hitting everything that moves. We've had that, and it's sad because then again, similar to what Mark said, you don't get the support. You don't get, crisis teams don't want to know he's in a place of safety, he's in a nursing home. So what's the harm? You know, well, the harm's to the 37 other people that are here. And it takes off. I had an incident one Christmas where it took something like 3 days to get support in for somebody, and that we ended up getting the local authority to pay for it, but a specialist one-to-one mental health nurse to come in and sit with someone who was extremely aggressive. But that wasn't the person that was assessed. And I suspect when the assessment was performed, that person was given a lot of sedatives to keep them nice and calm. And yeah, the hospital wouldn't have them back. Police didn't want to know. I'm aware we're running out of time. It's my wedding anniversary. My wife's just kind of stood by the door waiting for us to go out. So one thing I was going to say before we finish, possibly controversial, I've made a note here. One of the reasons maybe I don't have so many problems with relatives is because you're saying about the beds in home care, and people aren't making them properly. I'm very much of the opinion that if that's the case, then we need to be making every effort we can to keep them happy. And I'm the sort of person, if someone comes in and goes, oh, well, our bed's not being made properly, I'll go, that's fine. Show us how you want it made. We'll put a plan together. I'll get this done. And we'll review in a week. I think people just want most times to be listened to more than anything else. And yeah, you are going to get people who are going to have, if they won £1 million, they'd moan they didn't win 2 million. You are going to get people like that. But primarily, people just want to feel heard and they want things to be just so. And I think and they want to see you've put the effort in, and you can't fault effort. And you see, I've dealt with people who've had quite, let's say, unrealistic expectations, just from sitting and listening and putting plans in place. I've been able to talk them down. I enjoy the challenge. I'm quite happy with people complaining because I see that as an opportunity to, one, improve the quality of care that person's getting, and two, maybe improve the service. So that's my take on it.
Ben, please apologise to your wife for us, because I had no idea it was your wedding anniversary. When Mrs. Miller, he offered to come on the show. I didn't drag him on the show, so
He told us he didn't want to go out for dinner.
yeah, he's like, no, I'd rather do the show than go out for dinner.
Ben,
if
you can
drop off.
Yeah, I was going to say, drop off and go for dinner.
Go and enjoy your dinner.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks. Take care. Bye. Thanks, Caroline.
Just on what Ben was saying then, Caroline, because obviously you found it interesting around the whole local authority thing. I'll just give an example of something. I know I won't keep us much longer because we are at time. But I had an incident once where, and I won't mention names, and I'll be very, very vague because I want to be respectful. But we had an incident where we had to get the police out. There was a death involved. It was quite a serious situation. I think we spoke about this off air previously. And it was very, very difficult for us. And we were put in a very unsafe position. No one would take this person. We couldn't take this person to A&E after this death had occurred. This person was alive, by the way. There was another death involved in the situation. And we were actually awarded additional funding to provide one-on-one care 24/7 for this individual. Fantastic. Whilst they looked for alternate placement, brilliant. The fact that actually that money had come through, it was easier for them to pay us that one-on-one care than actually go and source an alternate place of care. So this went on for a number of months when actually it really, really shouldn't have. And we were very good. We spoke to our providers, we spoke to our regulator, we spoke to the commissioners, we spoke to everyone in the families, and everyone was understanding and involved and knew we were doing as much as we can do. But a bit like when you have a charity to fill a gap, once that gap's filled, it no longer becomes a priority to the powers that be. And it's very, very difficult to get out of that situation, which is a real shame. So in some cases, a case of going, no, even if it was one-to-one, it's not safe for us. It's probably some option that people have to go down because they know full well that even if a temporary solution was put in place, it's probably going to be a long temporary solution rather than that short term. We're not going to be able to meet this person's needs. Very, very difficult. We'll finish it off quite quickly, maybe just some pointers on what should providers do to get this right. So in the conversations you've had, Caroline, with the people who've experienced all of this and the information you've had the privy of seeing, what are some of your observations that providers could do to actually improve this situation, to move that negative press and to be more open with this? What things could we be doing?
Okay, so there is the very kind of practical side is following policies and procedures that are out there that need to be followed. You find in the regulations and so on. As I said, the CMA has published also that really like a quite helpful guide. I think we need to do some work on it. And then from a more theoretical and just human side, and I think it also says here in the title of today's show is Nurturing Relationships. I think it's all about good relationships, and good relationships to me, and I see it in all the research I do, is about having that compassion, that empathy, knowing, that often when people are the way they are, it's because of all those really difficult emotions of sadness and shame and so on that come together here, and being able to act on those to support these people. And I know that's very difficult because you don't get supported either. But I think that makes the difference. So really that human-centeredness and trying to meet as humans and understand and forgive. I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Mark, from an outsider's point of view, sorry, Caroline, just to come back to you for a second, I think if you as a researcher not working in social care can understand this, I do worry sometimes why we have people in social care who might not get this point, and that comes from commissioners and everyone else. Some of it is quite obvious. So why aren't we there already? Why aren't we doing those things? Mark, what are your sort of views on this?
Well, I'm going to bring Jenny's comment in because it was actually one of the things I was thinking was actually about putting yourself in a family member's position. And I think I live in a village full of older people, and I am the worst when the care provider rocks up the home care agency and they don't twiddle the key safe numbers, or they turn up and they're wearing flip-flops, or they're only in there for 5. I'm out there if I'm working from home and I'm like, you haven't done what you're meant to be doing because you've only been in there for 5 minutes. And obviously I know about the CQC and if they trot back into the person's home. So I can very much understand kind of from a relative's point of view, actually, you just want great, good quality care for your loved one. I think we spoke about training earlier, and I think we also need to be aware of our team, because they develop these really strong relationships with the people they're supporting. And actually the impact of when somebody is given notice for whatever reason, whether it's because, it's because relatives are complaining, whether it's because you can't meet their needs anymore, it has a lasting impact on the team. And you'll quite often hear of them, oh, do you remember we used to have Mrs. So-and-so, or we had so-and-so, and do you remember when they used to do that? And it's almost like they're mourning the loss of like somebody that might have passed away, but actually they've just gone to somewhere new. And I think one thing that's really hard for care teams is that actually you never hear, really, unless you stay in touch with a relative, you never get an update from the social worker. So actually if somebody's moved on because actually their needs have changed and you can't look after them, or they've got a lot better and they're more independent and they've gone maybe to a step down service, is you never hear anything back. So it actually is almost like you might have put in like 4, 5, 6 years worth of support, and then it's gone. You never hear from them anymore. And I think we have to acknowledge that actually for our teams, sometimes they're in a very difficult position and we need to kind of wrap some support around them as well. Adam, what do you think?
Well, I mean, empathy and that human nature side of things has been covered quite completely. So I'll go down the practical route of things of what we should be doing as providers to actually even prevent this sort of scenario from happening. I'm not saying preventing serving notices of care, because actually they can be really positive things. So I'm going to talk about them in a positive light. So for me, it would be open, honest communication at all times, from the day that you go and do assessment to the day that that person leaves your service. When you're doing your care reviews, know your LPAs, know who's got power of attorney for health and well-being, and get them involved at every single step of those care reviews. And I don't mean, a monthly care review, signing off the care plan, everything's fine. It's communicating them on all angles. If you've got a care planning system which allows relatives to gain access through a portal, use it. It exists for a reason. And being able to see that 24-hour side of things probably would allow them to see that loved one's care in a more unrestricted view than just, say, a 20-minute phone call conversation. But keeping them in the loop of all of these changes and all of these progressions, and invite them to all the conversations you have with your commissioning authority. So if you're having a meeting with the local authority around this person's care needs, request it in person or via Teams or Zoom if possible, and invite the relative, the LPA, to it, because they will be there listening to that conversation. Then they're entitled to be a part of that conversation. Have the resident or the service user there if they're able to, and it's not detrimental to their health. Have everyone involved in all these conversations, because when you finally start getting to that point of going, right, we might need to serve a notice of care, actually what you should have is a 6-month projected plan of care moving forward. So an incident occurs, plan the next 6 months. Plan where you want to be in 6 months' time, with 2 options at the end. Either this person's still living with us because we've had increased funding and we can actually put extra care in place, or we're going to be looking at a new place of care. Give them ample of time to prepare for this, even if moving isn't going to be the option. Because actually sometimes people will go, we've thought about it and I don't mind staying the 6 months, but if a new place comes up that's going to be more suited to my mum's needs, we're going to go for it. And that makes it so much easier, just having that open and honest dialogue at all times. And don't get short with relatives. If they are being nasty and they are being abusive and they are being aggressive, there's ways and means around it, and it's really difficult. It really, really is. If you're a relative, don't attack people. It's not cute. It's not funny. It's not clever. It's like going to a restaurant and shouting at waitresses and waiting staff. It's not fine. It's not okay. We have to have that quid pro quo of relationships moving forward. Need to be able to have that positive professional and that human relationship for care to be effective, for care to be outstanding. It's not going to work 100% of the time. We get that. There are going to be rotten apples. But just having that clear process, being proactive instead of reactive, putting that plan in place over a 6-month period to go, actually, this is where things might be. You'd be doing this with an MDT team. You'd be doing this with a community psychiatric team and a community mental health team. So why aren't we doing it with relatives at the same time? Let's put those plans together with everyone that's supposed to be involved in them. And then actually, this serving notice to care could become a more positive thing, because people will then realize the work that's gone in and the reasons behind it, the safety of that individual, and the safety of everyone else in the team and everyone else living in that place of care. So yes, empathy, and they're my sort of practical, as a manager hat, sort of things we should be doing moving forwards. Did I miss anything?
I can't unmute. My technology skills after having 2 weeks off have gone down the pan, but no, I don't think so. I've really enjoyed tonight. I think it's been very thought-provoking and almost like reminiscing on kind of different times. Because I think I'm not a registered manager anymore. I'm kind of a bit more reserved. Obviously, you're not either, and actually it kind of takes you back to what it's like actually managing that team and the expectations of the people you're supporting and kind of the loved ones around them. Caroline,
this is why I'm going back to being a nominated individual, though. This is why I'm getting back into care, because for me it's so important to have people who want to do right in care. Caroline, how have you found tonight?
I found it really thought-provoking, and also, I mean, I've known this already before I came on, but now I'm, coming back and saying we really need to know more about this topic. We need to get much deeper into what is happening, and and also, around the relationships between people in care homes, staff and families. What can we do to support everybody? What can be put in place? So I think so much more work needs to be done, and I really want to hear from everybody who wants to talk to me, because it's a next piece of work I want to do, is to actually hear that side of the story, to go much deeper. And so please do get in touch with me, and thanks so much for having me.
No, Caroline. That's absolutely fine. I just wonder whether you just want to have just a short few words about why it's important that we as providers get involved in social care research, Caroline, because I know it can be a drag sometimes trying to get people to respond to social care research. So why is it important that we now get involved?
Look, I mean, you are the people who are providing the care. You are social care. So if we don't hear from you, we don't know how things have to change, what has to change, what's working well, and what do we need to do more of. And then it is the media, it is, reports that scratch the surface that are leading the narrative, rather than, knowing what's really going on. So do get involved, also become researchers. I mean, a lot of, in healthcare, a lot of people have gone through medic degrees or so on, and they are actually doing medics, and they're doing research. So we have to have people doing research, and so come and join us. There's so many opportunities. There's so much money now, research money, going into social care, and we want to build people up to come and work with us directly.
Thank you so much.
How can people get in contact with you, Caroline? Conscious that we know obviously that you're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and we don't want your personal accounts being bombarded, but yeah, is there an email or anything that's best to use? Yeah,
very simple email, caroline.green@kcl.ac.uk. You can get in touch with me, and it'd be great to hear from people. Perfect. Thank you very much. I popped it into the comments, so hopefully people will be able to see it. So yes, that wraps up tonight.
Very good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again. It has been probably one of the meatiest conversations that we've had for a very long time, but I think it's one that needed to happen. And, we are a platform to elevate, educate and celebrate all things social care. And I know we have a very strong relatives and residents voice within the Caring View. Both Mark and I have been advocates for rights for residents since the beginning of the pandemic. I've been a John's campaign ambassador for the last, 6 years now, which is crazy. And I do sometimes feel that we do ignore the points of view of managers, and they are very sort of quietened down because the person's story is more impactful, and actually there's a holistic picture here that we need to take into account. So I've enjoyed tonight to be able to have that conversation. This is available on Catch Up. We do want to hear from more of you. It would possibly be great to do a joint up conversation in a few months' time, Caroline, or even once you've got some new research put together, where we can have relatives and we can have managers on the show discussing this, to show that actually we are nurturing relationships and we are bringing those conversations together in an amicable way. So I think that would be great. It's been a pleasure having you here, Caroline, even if you are in Spain, probably with nice weather and not in the 180 millimeters of rain we've had in July this year in England. But it's been a pleasure having you tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks
you
so
very
much for having me.
This has been The Caring View. Don't forget to hit subscribe, hit that bell. You'll never miss an episode of ours. Go over to our podcast where you can catch up on all of our 4 series that are currently airing. And Mark and I have got the next few series planned. Obviously changing jobs now, so we need to plan on when we're going to get these recorded. But there will be new content coming out on our podcast over the next few months. And don't forget our Freebie Fridays going out every single Friday at www.thecaringview.co.uk. But until then, we will see you next week for our weekly episode over on YouTube. But take care, good night, God bless, and we will see you next week.
See you later.